Bill Ryan, opinólogo y periodista, se le llamó conspiranoico en su tiempo a este señor. Lo que vas a ver es un video de hace 10 años que se subió a YouTube, donde él habla que un colega de él, de cargo alto en el ejército, de forma anónima le contó esto, sobre una propagación de una gripe en China, y que iba a llegar a ser una pandemia, y que no se iba a poder controlar. Y muchos más datos interesantes que no te los quiero contar, quiero que lo veas por ti mismo. ¿Cómo todo esto es posible? Esto es 100% real y lo pueden comprobar. Por favor, mira el video completo. Le dejo el material para que lo miren. En la descripción también dejaré todos los datos, página acerca de este hombre, para que ustedes puedan corroborar todos los datos. En concreto el video dura como 10 minutos, pero en el minuto 6:24 empieza a hablar sobre el tema de este virus. Pero es interesante que lo miren todo.
I want to try and differentiate out between what it was that he reported because he'd heard it with his own ears and what it is that is his speculation and my speculation about how all this fits together. It's very important information. We need to know this stuff. Even though it doesn't look like it's going to be on track, I don't think this will happen. I think that there are a bunch of crazy people there who are extremely determined to do something, and they were in a hurry, and this is important to understand, they were in a rush to try and roll out this sequence of events. Now, what he described is what the sequence of events was. It starts with Israel attacking Iran. Now, this hasn't happened yet. There have been a number of indications that there are forces which are trying to push this into happening. You've only got to follow the news for the last 2 years to realize that the public is being prepared for a justification for this kind of thing. Iran is being set up as being the bad guys that deserve something to happen to them, and so on and so forth. Now, that's going to be the start of what is like the opening gambit in a big chess game. And the plan is to provoke Iran or China to retaliate. And our guy, our source, who is a military man, is privately as convinced as he can be, although this has never been made public and this is not publicly known, that Iran does have nuclear weapons. He believes that they have been provided by China behind the scenes. And all of this is intended because it's all right with these controlling forces that Iran has nuclear weapons, because they want them to be used. The plan is for either Iran or for China to retaliate after Iran is struck with a nuclear weapon. At that point, there will be a limited nuclear exchange in the Middle East, followed by a ceasefire. He heard this being planned in this meeting. This is being choreographed. It's like the script for a movie. This is exactly what's intended to happen. And during this time, the other thing that's being set up for this, and many people watching this will be aware that this is being set up in the background. We've had a lot of information about this from a number of good researchers from many countries who are reporting this on the internet, that things are being set up in many of the Western countries for there to be heavy controls over populations, martial law, increased powers on security forces who are not just the army or the police, but in Britain, for example, our source said that he absolutely knew personally for a fact, that a very large number of private security people, their powers were being increased to give them the ability to arrest people, the ability to detain, the ability to handle riots in streets. And here we're talking about just regular people working in private security, people who give the parking tickets on the streets. Their powers are being increased in the same way. And last year we heard President Obama talking about how he wanted to have a sort of national guard at home in America ready to handle this kind of thing. There are a lot of indicators that this is being set up. And in this rollout of this crazy scenario, where it is intended that there will be a limited nuclear exchange in the Middle East, the idea is that as the world looks upon this with horror, then they will demand from their governments that there are heavy controls over travel, over communication, over people who meet, over people who protest in the streets. They want to make sure that they don't have crazy bombers on airplanes, crazy bombers in the shopping malls. They want to make sure, and because people will be driven into fear by this, they'll request and demand and insist on heavy controls from their governments, which will be justified. And this is where you're going to kind of get the martial law situation in all the Western countries. It's intended as a justification. All of this is just the start of something, because this story gets much bigger, and it's pretty horrifying. And if watching this now you're feeling a little bit shocked, this is how I was feeling when I heard this information, and this is how our source was feeling when he was hearing this information in this meeting, because this is just the beginning. Now, during the time of this ceasefire, everyone's shocked, everyone's frightened, everyone's really terrified about where this is going to go. There are all kinds of heavy controls over populations everywhere. And then the next thing that happens in this chess game that's being played is that biological weapons are released on China. He heard this being discussed in this meeting. They will release a flu-like virus that will be genetically targeted against the Chinese population. It's racially targeted against the Chinese people. It's designed to spread like wildfire and to knock out a large number of the Chinese people. And these people in this meeting were laughing about this. They said, China will catch a cold. Those were their words. China will catch a cold. And they were laughing about the fact that these biological weapons will wreak havoc among the Chinese population. And after that, then what effectively will be a kind of plague will actually spread right across the world to the West as well. Our source was not clear whether this was a Chinese retaliation or whether the thing would just spread out of control in the way that it would be very understandable if it did, whether it's racially targeted or not. These things actually mutate. So now you've got a situation where there's been a limited nuclear war in the Middle East. There's a pandemic that really is sweeping across the world and really is killing people very visibly. And you've got this totalitarian military lockdown in all the governments in the Western worlds because everyone's going to be in panic about all of this. And then, he said, then the real war starts. Something that would be justifiably called the Third World War, with a much more major nuclear exchange. And at this point, I asked him, is this just about population reduction? What is this about? Why are they doing this? Why this insane Dr. Strangelove plan for just unleashing all of this stuff on the world? Why do it? Now, as our conversation went on, I started to find answers to those questions. Now, some of this is speculation. I want to share this speculation with you because it's important enough that we work together here to figure out what's going on. And there are some clues, there's some very important clues that I'm going to present to you here in this video. He said, absolutely, it's about population reduction. So I said, well, in this meeting, did they mention any figures? And he said, yes, they did, 50%. Half the world's population. This is planned as per the Georgia Guidestones. For those of you who don't know what the Georgia Guidestones are, it's a stone monument in Georgia in America that was erected anonymously a number of years ago. It's in 8 languages, and it's like an Illuminati manifesto for a new world, as it were. And just hold that thought about this being a manifesto for a new world. This is an important concept here in what I'm presenting. One of the key parts of this manifesto for this new world is that there should be a population of 500 million people. Now, 500 million people is an enormous reduction from the nearly 7 billion that we've got at the moment. That's pretty much 95% of people who would no longer be on this planet. And 50% is a step towards that. And there's a reason why they're doing all of this. There's a reason why they're in a hurry. There's a reason for this insanity. And when he was explaining this, then he said that they have a name for this plan. This project has got a name. And I said, well, what is this name? He said, it is called the Anglo-Saxon Mission. The Anglo-Saxon Mission.